Rachel clenched her fist and, without warning, punched me hard in my pregnant stomach. The sudden pain made my world spin, and I let out a desperate cry. My body crumpled to the ground, and I felt a strange rush of liquid. My water had broken. Panic set in, and I screamed, "Ah! Somebody, please help." Fighting through the pain, I somehow managed to dial my mother-in-law before everything went black. My name is Angela, and I'm a 32-year-old woman who's 9 months pregnant. My husband and I are on our way to visit his family, who live just 30 minutes away. We usually go there a couple of times a month, but today is special. My kind mother-in-law is making her famous peach cobbler, a dish I've been craving. She's been through a lot since losing her husband last year, but she's thrilled to become a grandmother for the first time. However, not everyone is excited. My sister-in-law, Rachel, has been struggling with infertility. She's been married for 6 years and started fertility treatments 2 years ago, but unfortunately, nothing has worked yet. This situation has made her irritable and distant. Normally, my mother-in-law tries to invite us when Rachel is not around to avoid conflict, but today, Rachel unexpectedly showed up. "Long time no see, Angela. You look like you've gained a lot of weight. Are you sure you're not just being lazy because you're pregnant?" She mocked, her eyes narrowing. I felt my face flush, but before I could respond, my husband jumped in. "Rachel, she's 9 months pregnant. Her belly is supposed to be big. You can't talk to her like that." Rachel rolled her eyes. "I'm just saying it's tough for the baby if the mother puts on too much weight. I'm thinking about her health." "Thank you, Rachel. I'll try to be more careful," I replied softly, not wanting to escalate the situation, but she wasn't done. "Don't just stand there. If you have so much energy to talk back, why don't you start cleaning the house? A little exercise wouldn't hurt," she added, thrusting a broom and dustpan at me. Before I could react, my mother-in-law stepped in. "Rachel, enough. Angela is our guest, and she's here to relax." Rachel huffed and stomped upstairs, leaving us in tense silence. Despite the rocky start, the rest of the day passed pleasantly. We enjoyed the cobbler, sipped tea, and talked. Though Rachel stayed hidden in her room, I tried not to let her attitude bother me. But a few days later, everything changed. I went to my in-laws' house alone to discuss some plans with my mother-in-law. To my surprise, the front door was unlocked, and when I walked in, I found Rachel in the living room. "Rachel, I thought you were working today." She smirked. "I took the day off. I see you're back. Why don't you make yourself useful and clean up the mess you left last time?" "I really don't feel well today," I replied, holding my belly. "I just came to talk to Mom." "Stop making excuses. You think being pregnant means you can just lie around," she snapped. Trying to avoid a fight, I picked up the broom. But as I bent down to sweep, a sharp pain shot through my stomach. Before I could process it, Rachel's fist slammed into my belly. I doubled over, gasping in pain. My vision blurred, and I felt a sudden rush of warm liquid. My water had broken. "Ah, somebody, please help," I screamed, clutching my stomach. Ignoring my cries, Rachel just watched, her face twisted in a mix of anger and satisfaction. Desperate, I fumbled for my phone and dialed my mother-in-law before everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My body ached, and an IV was in my arm. Panic gripped me as I looked down at my now flat belly. "What about my baby?" I whispered, hitting the call button. A nurse came in and smiled softly. "You went into labor early, but your baby girl is safe. She's in the NICU, but she's stable." Relief washed over me, followed by a wave of anger. Rachel had hurt me, and she'd hurt my child. Just then, my husband and mother-in-law burst into the room, their faces tight with worry. "Are you okay? We got here as fast as we could," my husband asked, his voice shaking. "Rachel did this," I managed to say, tears streaming down my face. "She punched me. My water broke, and I—" "Calm down," my mother-in-law said gently, her own eyes wet. "She won't get away with this." The next day, as if to test our resolve, Rachel showed up at the hospital with her husband. "Let's settle this," she said flatly. "We'll pay you to drop any charges." I felt my blood boil. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted. "You put my baby's life at risk." Rachel's husband sighed. "Just take the money, Angela. It'll save us all a lot of trouble." "No, I'll see you in court," I snapped. "Get out." Before they could respond, my husband stepped in. "You think you can buy your way out of this? You're lucky I'm not suing for attempted murder." Rachel's smug expression faltered, and she stammered something about it being an accident, but we were done listening. My husband and I filed a police report that very day. The legal process was draining. Rachel tried to play the victim, claiming she didn't mean to hurt me and was just frustrated. But the evidence spoke louder. With my testimony, medical records, and witness statements, she was found guilty of assault. The court ordered her to pay a fine and attend mandatory counseling. After that, my husband and I decided to move far away. We changed our phone numbers and cut all ties with Rachel and her husband. It was painful for my mother-in-law, but she understood we needed to protect our family. A few months later, our baby girl was strong enough to come home. Looking at her tiny, smiling face, I felt a sense of peace. The nightmare was over, and we were finally free from Rachel's toxicity. Rachel's life, on the other hand, fell apart. Her husband left her, and she struggled to make ends meet. Despite everything, I felt no satisfaction in her downfall. I was too focused on my own family's healing and happiness. In the end, justice was served, and we moved forward. Our little family was safe, happy, and stronger than ever. Rachel's reckless behavior that day made it clear how unstable she had become. Even after the assault, she didn't seem remorseful. With the support of my husband and mother-in-law, we went ahead and pressed charges, but we knew that wasn't the end of it. A few weeks later, we moved to a new apartment in a different city, trying to put the past behind us. My daughter was slowly recovering, and we were beginning to settle into our new routine. Life was starting to feel normal again. One evening, I was resting on the sofa, still dealing with the lingering pain from my surgery, when I heard a loud banging on the door. "Hey, I know you're in there, Angela. Get out here now, coward." Rachel's voice rang out from outside. I froze in disbelief. How had she found us? My husband was still at work, and I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Rachel, what on earth are you doing?" I shouted back through the door. "Your shouting is disturbing everyone. Please leave. No matter how many times you hide, I'll find you." She screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. "You have to listen to me. It's your fault everything has fallen apart for me." Her words made no sense, but the fury in her voice was terrifying. I knew I couldn't open the door. There were families and elderly people living here, and despite it being late, she didn't seem to care that her shouting was echoing through the quiet building. "Rachel, I'm sorry you're upset, but you need to leave now." "I'm calling the police," I said firmly, forcing strength into my voice. "Please, Angela, just listen to me," she cried, banging even harder. "You've ruined everything. It's because of you I lost my husband and my life. It's not fair that you get to be happy when I'm miserable." Tears filled my eyes as I pressed my back against the door. She wasn't making sense. It seemed like she saw my pregnancy as some sort of competition she had lost. But this wasn't a competition. I had never intended to hurt her, and I couldn't understand why she blamed me. "Rachel, you need help," I called out gently. "Hurting me won't fix anything." Her voice turned venomous again. "You should have waited until I got pregnant first. You should have considered my feelings. You should have." I didn't hear the rest of her rant because, just then, the sound of sirens blared from outside. It seemed one of the neighbors had called the police. Rachel must have realized it too, because she started to panic. "No, what do you mean? The police are here?" she whimpered, her voice trembling. "Angela, please, don't let them take me. You have to hide me." Despite her pleas, I stayed silent. I wasn't going to protect her. I knew she needed professional help, and maybe this would be the first step. The officers arrived and began questioning her right outside our door. I explained the situation through the door crack, and just then, my husband came home. When I saw him, I broke down in tears, filling him in on what had happened. He turned to the officers, his face grim. "You need to take her away," he said firmly. "She's dangerous." Rachel was placed in handcuffs and taken away, still screaming for me to help her. That night, Rachel's husband called, his voice shaky and desperate. "Angela, I'm divorcing Rachel. I can't handle her anymore. Please don't involve me in this mess." I was stunned by his sudden declaration. "What? You're just going to abandon her?" "Yes, I have to," he said flatly. "If I don't, I'll lose my job. The scandal at work is too much. My boss found out what happened in the hospital, and I'm already being transferred to a regional office. I can't keep covering for her. Just, please, leave me out of it." I hung up the phone, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Part of me felt sorry for him, but another part couldn't forget that he'd stood by Rachel's side when she tried to bribe us. He was as guilty as she was. In the following weeks, Rachel's life continued to unravel. The legal battle drained what little savings she had, and her reputation was ruined. She moved from friend to friend, but her behavior pushed everyone away. Eventually, she had no choice but to work part-time jobs just to survive. Meanwhile, my husband and I did everything we could to rebuild our lives. We changed our phone numbers again, cut off all ties, and focused on our daughter's health. She was discharged from the hospital a few months later, and seeing her growing stronger every day made every struggle worth it. One day, as I was watching my baby girl sleep peacefully in her crib, I felt a weight of gratitude. We had been through so much, but we were finally free from Rachel's toxic influence. My mother-in-law was still in touch with us, apologizing every chance she got. Though it was painful, she understood why we needed to keep our distance. Rumor had it that Rachel had fallen deep into debt. With no friends, no family, and nowhere to turn, she was barely making it through. Despite everything she'd done to me, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. But then, I remembered the fear I'd felt when she stood outside my door, screaming at me. I remembered the pain and the risk she put my daughter through. That twinge of pity vanished as quickly as it came. Rachel had made her choices, and now she was paying the price. After all the turmoil, my husband and I decided it was time for a fresh start. We moved to a new city, far away from any reminders of the traumatic past. We made new friends, found a supportive community, and started focusing on our future together as a family. Slowly, the scars Rachel had left began to fade. My daughter grew stronger each day, her giggles filling our home with joy. Watching her smile, I knew we had made the right decision to fight for our peace. Rachel's story, however, ended on a sadder note. With her reputation destroyed and no support left, she became a shadow of the person she once was. I no longer feared her, but I also no longer cared about her fate. My focus was on my family's happiness, and that was all that mattered. In the end, we had won our freedom. Justice had been served, and we were finally able to live in peace, free from Rachel's shadow.